Hello. So, our guest today is Josh Searles, a great guitarist and friend of mine from the Sunshine Coast. We first met at the Caslo Guitar Festival in maybe 2015 or 2016 or something like that. And we also have collabed for the Okanagan Guitar Festival a few years back. But anyways, he's a super interesting person with tons of diverse experiences and probably some of the most wide-ranging experiences out of all the guitarists I know. So in addition to classical guitar, Josh has decades of experience in music production and DJing and sound design with tons of original tracks, one of which we heard at the very beginning of the stream today, and as well as having licensed music for various film and video productions. And on top of that, also done piano and French horn and ballet, and is also an experienced sailor from what I recall.
Yep.
And among a dozen other niche skills and experiences. So a very colorful life. And I think that's part of what makes Josh genuinely one of the most musical and expressive performers that I know. So, yeah, very excited to chat with you today. And
Me too. Thanks, TJ.
yeah. So, with all that being said, if you want to see tickets, if you want to see the concert of Josh and Celso Machado in concert, go to vancouverguitar.org and you can get the tickets for their November 22nd show. And without any further waffling from me, let's start the interview. So let's start with basic background stuff. How did you get started with your career in music?
Well, I mean, I started music from a very, very young age. I was fortunate to have my father was a composer, like more like an amateur composer, but he was also the local piano tuner. He was the only guy in the area I grew up in that tuned piano by ear, and he taught piano, and he was also a rep for Yamaha. So he had, before I was born, he actually had like a piano store and sold pianos and stuff like that. So he
Mm-hmm.
retired when I was young because he was quite a lot older. He was old when I was born. He was in his 50s.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so he was a really incredible musician and he was born in the 20s in Britain. So, he actually flew a Spitfire in World War II. So just to
Wow.
give you an idea, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but he was one of those guys that just because of the time that he grew up, he didn't get a chance to really, he was musical his whole life, but didn't get a chance to really explore it until he met my mom, who was a professional ballet dancer and had a ballet school. So I kind of just, it was like piano from about the age of 4. And because
Mm-hmm.
he was a part of the Ontario Music Teachers Association, it was kind of, it was a bit serious. He was serious about it.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, obviously having a mom doing, teaching ballet brought me
Mm-hmm.
into ballet. And like I got 2 brothers, and one of them, like we all did music, but I think the music and the ballet really, it kind of grabbed me really, really quick.
Yeah.
So I kind of just, I did that. I did piano, it was all Royal Conservatory stuff when I was studying when I was young. I did piano all the way up until I was about 16, 17. I don't think I made it too far in the Royal Conservatory grades with piano. Like, I think that's part of why guitar were good, because these guys don't want to do the same thing.
Yeah.
They want to do different things. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I got into, I don't even know why or how, but I decided that French horn was the thing. I was like
Yeah.
maybe 12, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to play the French horn. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I got really seriously into that. And I was lucky because there was a really fantastic musician, Clyde Mitchell, he was the conductor at the time. This is in the 90s. This is a little
Yeah.
while ago. So he was a conductor at the time for the Montreal Symphony, and he was also a French horn player as well. And he actually was in North Van years ago with the North Van Choral Society or something like that. But anyway,
Oh.
I haven't seen him since I was like, maybe 14, but he
Mm-hmm.
was a wonderful musician and a wonderful horn player. So I got to study with him. And, the horn is like one of those, it's a tricky, I mean, all the instruments are tricky. There's not an easy instrument to play
Yeah.
well. Like we just, and like, I mean, I know
Mm-hmm.
guitarists, we tend to feel that the guitar is really hard, which is true. But the French horn is pretty tricky. You got to like, it's, it's one of those instruments that actually helps me with the guitar and helps me in
Oh,
life
yeah.
because it's, yeah, well, because you have what I call the no guts no glory thing. It also
Mm-hmm.
exists in sailing and boats and stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes you got to go for the note. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you in French horn, if it's so much, diaphragm and
Yeah.
air power and stuff, that like, especially for high notes, if you don't commit, like you might get the note, but it's going to squeak out if you're not in. So
Yeah.
you're better off going for the note,
Mm-hmm.
even if it's wrong on the, on
Yeah.
the way out, because if you don't fully commit, your chances are a lot less. So anyway,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, and I love that instrument a lot, and I had to do competitions and stuff. Like I did the
Mm-hmm.
Kiwanis music festivals and things like that. And I guess I was probably about, I was maybe about 13 or 14 when I started guitar. Suddenly it
Yeah.
was that, yeah, guitar, that's what I'm doing. And I actually got into metal. I was like, I have an older half brother who's a recording engineer, and he was recording in Toronto and did a lot of bands and stuff. So
Yeah.
he introduced me to a lot of music. And so, yeah, electric guitar was the thing. And I thought this is amazing. And then because Ron was, my brother Ron Searles, he was doing all these recordings. He recorded a Canadian guitarist, Don Ross,
Oh,
in
yeah, I've
Toronto.
heard of him.
Right. Don's amazing. And so that was, that would have been in the 90s again.
Yeah,
And so there's like a documentary on CBC on Don, and Ron was like, "I'm on TV, you gotta, check this
that's
out."
really
So
cool.
it was cool, and it was my first introduction to finger picking, right? And it's still
Hmm.
not classical, but it was like I'd never seen a guitar played like that.
Yeah.
I thought I was hearing four guitars. I was like, this is crazy. And then so from there, that's when I discovered the classical guitar.
Hmm.
And it was actually kind of funny because one of the first places I heard it was like there's this old movie called Crossroads, and it's like,
Yeah.
do you know that film? And it's like
Yeah.
Steve Vai, and like the whole idea. I think the premise of the film is like this kid who plays classical and then like learns blues and is like, see you later, classical guitar, blues is way cooler.
Yeah.
I went the total opposite way. I was
Hmm.
like, see you later, blues and rock. I was like, classical is so cool. It's like it's more
Hmm.
metal than metal. So anyway, I got into that, but I grew up in rural Canada, so it was, there was not a classical guitar teacher where I
Yeah.
was. I had there was a folk artist there who had taken a few guitar, like classical guitar lessons. She had like Spanish Romance,
Yeah.
the beret, the one that we all know,
Hmm.
the Alamand or whatever it was. But so I got to learn a little bit from her, which was cool. And I did most of my playing as a teenager, just sort of figuring it out on my own sort of thing. And
Yeah.
because I had such a musical background, it wasn't hard for me to read. And that was another thing that I love, versus piano with like French horn and guitar, they're both in treble clef. So I
Hmm.
found it a lot easier to read than trying. I
Yeah.
was like, treble clef was just easy for me, and bass, I don't think I paid enough attention to it. But so
Hmm.
I found the music was, fairly easy to read and stuff. And I mean, of course, I was reading really easy music then, right? Like, so then, and then I was doing that, but I was still involved in like different sounds and different things. I didn't grow up in a family, we never listened to pop music or anything like that, or any popular sort of music.
Yeah.
And not that that's a bad thing, just that's just how I grew up. So I was always into weird, not weird, but like different sounds and like
Hmm.
in different things. So, and like in the 90s, it's when electronic music really sort of came in, right?
Yeah.
And like with my British roots and stuff, I always been paying attention to the sounds over there. And it was and so I started listening to all these cool sounds and things you can do with computers and things. And I started to get really into that. I started adding pedals to I still have my electric guitars, pedals and all these things and
Hmm.
delays and stuff, and it was just like really exciting. And then I got introduced, I guess it would have been about 96. It was one of the first computer programs that came out to write music on. And I think it was called Buzz. And it was like a binary. You'd find this interesting because you're into stuff like this. Like you made the music with binary code. Like
Oh,
it was like
interesting. Yeah.
zeros and ones programmed to make the sounds and stuff.
Hmm.
And I know that it sounds like electronic music and the guitar are very, very, very different. But there was one thing that really appealed to me out of both of those things.
Oh, yeah.
And it was the fact that you could be a complete, because I played in bands and I played in concert bands and youth symphonies and
Hmm.
all these things. I love playing music with people. I do. But I also love being solo. And the
Hmm.
classical guitar offers you a complete instrument
Hmm.
as a solo performer. And so did the computer and synths and stuff like that. Like I
Yeah.
could be by myself and coming up with all my own ideas and stuff like that. So, it sounds really far away from each other, but there was a really deep link that
Hmm.
connected me to both of those things.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
then, yeah, and it just all kind of like, I was like, I think I started DJing as a result, because my idea was I wanted to write music, and because then we were cutting records, right? Or you could
Hmm.
cut dub plates for $50. You could go to like a record press, and you could give them your music unmastered or whatever, and they would cut you a dub plate that would be good for 50 or 60 plays or something like that.
Hmm.
So the idea was that I'd write my own music and then DJ it, because that was sort of the format that music was, sort of produced in and
Yeah.
played and performed in. So, and it just kind of took off on its own. I went out, came out to Victoria in late 90s and doing more and more of that. And then, went back to Toronto for a while and then back to Vancouver. And it just, because it was early in that phase, that music. I mean, not super early, but early enough that there was a pathway to move forward. And so I just ended up, that just took off on its own sort of thing. And
Hmm.
and and I loved it. And I still always had my guitar. I always played it, but I didn't, circle back to studying till, sort of till later on.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was, it's very interesting comparing the world of, electronic music and
Hmm.
DJing and the world
Yeah.
of classical music. And, especially after a long time of doing that music, and I still do work professionally in that
Yeah.
world. But yeah, it's amazing going in between both these
Hmm.
days,
Yeah.
especially after a big absence of I hadn't studied in a long time and stuff. So I had a lot to get myself caught back up on when I
Yeah.
got back into guitar. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's a in a nutshell. I mean, there's lots more I could talk about in that world,
Hmm.
but yeah, that's sort of in a nutshell. And then, as I circled back into the guitar, now I've added, writing guitar and electronic music together and stuff, which
Yeah.
is it's really, I love it, but it's also, like classical guitar's niche, right? it's
Hmm.
it's the it's the niche of the niche,
Yes.
and electronic music, some of the electronic music I'm involved in is pretty niche as well. So
Hmm.
then you add those two together and it's like, yeah, I got, like, there's going to be three people in the world that are going to be
Yeah.
interested in electronic
But it's
music and
beautiful. I was listening to some of your stuff from your Ghost Orchid channel, and it's great. Like the classical guitar and electronic stuff, like it's so beautiful together. It's really,
Oh, I'm glad that you
it's
like it. Yeah, it's like, I
yeah,
mean,
it's
it's not
nice.
really, it was a bit of an experiment at first, but I mean, it's like you can do so many things with the guitar. It's got so many
Hmm.
colors. It's got so many, you can have so many different personalities, and and then I kind of like would come up with little ideas and licks and stuff, and then you can just put it in the computer, save it or whatever, and then just kind
Yeah.
of sort of add to it. And I mean, I've always, one of the things I liked about the computers and stuff was that I mean, I'm not a big computer guy. I'm not a super tech guy. It was more just like the tool, but you
Hmm.
can create such atmosphere, and you can do with all the effects and reverbs. My favorite effects, like reverb and delay. They're like the best out there, because you can just, you can make things really ethereal and stuff. And I mean, when I did that record, that's not many people have or use Dolby Atmos. Do you ever listen to anything in Dolby Atmos or
No.
surround sound? It's like super surround sound.
Okay.
And so I mixed that record actually in Dolby Atmos. So if you have a $1 million Atmos rig, you can listen
Yeah.
to it in surround, because they have like 12 speakers that go all the way around, and then they got the clouds and everything. And
Hmm.
when you mix something in Dolby Atmos, you actually get this, like, it's a whole setup that you add to your computer. I don't have it. I went to a studio. My other brother Ben actually mixed my Dolby Atmos and that album. But it's like you get this like graphic of a room with a
Hmm.
head in the middle, and
Okay.
then you get all these like orbs that are, each one represents a sound. And
Oh,
you have,
okay.
like, you've got these ones that are like our beds that will just stay through like a stereo channel, and then you get other ones that you can literally program to move around.
Oh,
And so,
interesting.
yeah, it's cool. So if you actually get a chance to listen to it in one of those sounds, or if you have spatial headphones, it'll do it to a certain degree. But yeah, like the rain sticks and those like natural sounds, like they fall down from the sky. And you can do these
Wow.
things where you have, like, I mixed a lot of it to make it sound like you're inside the band. So you could
Hmm.
have all your like reverbs and all these other sounds and all those like little like sparkly bits. They're all in around behind you, but the guitar and stuff like that's in front. So it's kind of like you're in front of the band. And then, but anyway, not that
It's
many
very
people get to
interesting.
experience that
Yeah.
way, because
Yeah. That'd be a cool
we're all listening
experience.
on headphones.
Yeah.
It is really neat, but yeah, it was a tricky project, like, making, getting all the editing, because, like, most, when you're working just in with computers and stuff, yeah,
Hmm.
you're editing. It's just really like,
Yeah.
cut that off, do those things. Well, you add a guitar, right? And so, and I'm doing a lot of I really like lots of arpeggios and stuff like that. So I had like, some of these tunes have like, 6 guitar parts with arpeggios in them, and just playing slightly different harmonies and stuff. And then you go into the recording studio, you record like 2 of each of these things, right? And so, and some of the tracks have like 8 guitar parts in them. So I've got like 2 of 8, 16, plus like different takes and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So we recorded everything, and then I got back into my studio and I was like, oh man, this is like a whole lot of work. Because I thought,
Yeah, it's a
when
lot.
you're playing, like, I feel like I'm pretty, like, I do my technique and I practice the metronome stuff, and I feel like
Hmm.
I'm pretty on. But when you get like 16 different guitar parts, and
Right.
you're all trying to play one note, right on
Yeah.
the beat, it's like I sounded like a ukulele orchestra. Like it was just all over. So I had
Yeah.
to, I really had to work. It was a bit of a learning experience for me just because I hadn't done a lot of that stuff. But
Hmm.
when you record something just classical, it's like you're working within your own, like if it's just a solo guitar,
Yeah.
it's still tricky. Like especially if you've got to do an edit or you got to punch in something, it's still really hard to make it smooth and work. But man, yeah, when you got like 16 of those things, I was
Hmm.
yeah, I had my work cut out for me.
Yeah. So recently, there's been a trend in having mixed media concerts. You talked about your recording, but have you ever considered doing like a hybrid electric plus classical guitar for a concert setting?
I have actually. I've done. I played because of like my connections in the electronic music world. When I came back, when I finished my master's in 23, I came back and that was when I was writing that album. So I like quickly got a couple tunes together and sent it to some of the people I know that promote these festivals and stuff. But they were like electronic music festivals. So
Hmm.
like I was saying earlier, it's a tricky place to find, a
Yeah.
spot. So I did a few small concerts, just me, and then with like another sort of electronica band. And then I went and did a couple big festivals and played it. And it was, it's cool. Like it actually, I mean, especially those festivals, because they have massive sound systems, right? And
Hmm.
it's not necessarily about being loud. It's just like because of my past with electronic music and I love bass and subsonics and all these things, and because you can really work the full frequency spectrum, right?
Hmm.
You can go way low, you can go way high. And so then when you get to do this on like a big sound system, it's really quite like it's, because you don't really notice if you listen to it on headphones, but you listen to it on a sound system, there's a lot of like, big sounds and stuff. And it
Yeah.
actually, like, I think it actually works really well in a sort of in a performance, like in a concert aspect. But it's like, again, it's like, doesn't really fit the electronic music world. Doesn't really fit the guitar world.
Hmm.
So it's a bit of a tricky thing. Like, because
Yeah.
I've got my next album I'm gonna do. I'm just waiting to finish my studio, and then I'll get that done. But it's like, yeah, it's a bit of a, for some reason, I'm just into like, in like, not normal or like,
Yeah. Yeah.
widely loved things. And I mean, that's just the world that I'm in.
Yeah. No, but it's
Yeah.
great.
It's a
I
lot of
was.
fun. I mean, I highly recommend, like, especially guitar stuff, because we're usually alone. It's
Hmm.
good to have, a way of like, you don't need a computer. You could do it on a 4 track or whatever, but it's just nice because you know what it's like, actually. It's almost like writing your own. I mean, these are really, really simple, but it's almost like writing and being in your own guitar concerto, right?
Hmm.
Because when I play them, so when I do it live, what I did, because it's kind of electronic and then the guitar. So
Yeah.
I've broken out everything in the computer and on, because I've got MIDI gear and stuff like that and outboard effects processors and things. So what I can do is I can control maybe 30% of the electronica music, like,
Hmm.
which I can't play the guitar when I'm doing that. I have to, it's kind of like, and if I was like born like maybe 50 years ago, I'd be one of those guys with the big, like, bass drum on my back and the
Yeah.
cymbal and all that stuff, like
That's
trying to
right.
just do it all myself. But you can, you can do some cool controlling and some neat things with the sounds and stuff.
Hmm.
And then what I would do with my guitar is I got this little Alhambra guitar that's got a pickup in it,
Hmm.
and I run it wirelessly to my setup, and then I have like effects and stuff like that, and then I got pedals and things, so I can like, you're like you kind of you're playing with your own little symphony. It's like your own little
Hmm.
concerto, sort of
Yeah.
thing. So, and you just like, I would just leave guitar parts out of my playback, and then could just play those and play harmonies and things like that, and then
Hmm.
I could put I would just swing the guitar down and then like work on the gear and stuff. So it's like, but again, it's just me on stage, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, is that some guitar? Cool. And then it's like, oh, he's twizzling some knobs now. That's cool. Okay. And then, oh, back to the guitar. Like if I had a
Yeah.
full band, it might be a bit more exciting, but
Yeah.
it works. Like, for the most part, I'd say.
Hmm. Speaking of this kind of like niche approach to things, do you have any like heroes or big musical influences that shaped your approach to the kind of music that you like and produce?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot. There are a lot of people, a lot of influences and things that I've been listening to that span all kinds of genres. I listen to a
Hmm.
ton of different kind of music, but there's one British composer and producer. His name is Matthew Herbert, and he came to Canada like and played this tiny little show in the fire hall in West Saanich on the island
Hmm.
in the 90s, and it was some of the most amazing music I've ever heard. And it was like in the beginning of electronica, but it was not made from computers and stuff. He sampled everything and
Oh
built
yeah.
everything from like his
Hmm.
own samples. And like the texture, I get shivers when I think about it still to this day. Like the texture sounds like, it was like, like spikes and nails and not like really sharp, clear, clean sounds. And
Hmm.
then it would go into like these big, huge, warm chords, like warm blankets, and like he just went everywhere. And he was, he built his career in the electronic music world, but then he just, excelled from there, and he did big band for a long time, and he's now doing he's working with the London Contemporary Orchestra, and he's doing actually he did this crazy project. He just 2 years ago I think it came out. It was called The Horse, and he
Okay.
like this is a bit of a interesting story,
Uh-huh.
totally worth anybody who's listened to this, totally worth checking out. So Matthew Herbert, The Horse, I believe it's called. He bought a dead horse off
Uh-huh.
eBay.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, right. This is where we're
That's a
going.
thing you can buy on eBay.
Apparently, I think it was eBay. It was something. It was online or
Yeah,
something,
okay.
right? But he had this thing shipped out to him, and then they made skins for drums, and they took the
Hmm.
bones, and they made flutes, and they made percussion instruments, and he wrote a whole record with this dead horse, and
Whoa.
it's performed with the London Contemporary Orchestra. So it's like I don't even really know exactly how he's done it,
Hmm.
and how because it's like he's got his gear and all the stuff, and then the orchestra's playing live, and it's just like it's really quite an amazing piece of work. And it's, for me, I love it because it's still kind of electronica, but it's
Yeah.
like also on this other side. So he was a massive, massive influence, because you could not nail this artist down. He was just, I think one of the things for me, it's always been, the pursuit of I mean, not excellence, but you know what I mean? Like everybody's always trying to be the best that they can possibly
Hmm.
be,
Yeah.
but with the integrity of the sound. So it's like, I'm not going to try to be anybody else. I'm not going to try to sound like that person or do something that person
Yeah.
is doing. It was like, he was an inspiration, like follow your own path. Like, if this is what resonates with you, do it,
Yeah.
and if you do it, wholeheartedly and consistently like that, you'll find other people who feel the same about it. So,
Hmm.
he was one of the big ones, but of course, like, I mean, Don Ross, I like for guitar, like I, grew
Yeah.
up with him. David Russell, like some of the old, like Julian Bream, the old school guitarists, because I'm kind of
Hmm.
old, so it was like those guys I listened to a lot. But not that I don't love like the new players. It was one of the things that was interesting about guitar. Just to bounce back there for a second, because I had, played when I was younger, and then kind of had a a break. I was out of the classical guitar loop for
Yeah.
like a fair amount of years. Going back and seeing, what everybody had learned and what people were able to do with the guitar, I was like, whoa, this is
Yeah.
cool. Like I love that old school playing, and like the, that style, and how everybody looked at the guitar then. But now it's just kind of like, wow, it's amazing what people are doing
Hmm.
with guitar. So, you know
Yeah.
everything moves forward.
Actually, I speaking of that, I remember like when we first met, you had like just started coming back into the classical guitar world. So what led to that? Like what brought you back into the fold?
Well, it's funny because it was so great, that Castle Guitar Festival,
Yeah, it
and
was.
you helped me with my tremolo, and like you're like everybody. It was really great. But like, I mean, I guess it would have been, because it was actually like, I think it was 2018 when I
Okay.
came to Castle the first time. I
Yeah.
think it was 2018 or 2019. 2018. 2018. Yeah. But I had been, really involved in the DJing and touring and doing everything. Because like I
Hmm.
went down to the States and toured, and like across Canada, I went to England, and it was like it was happening, and I was feeling like I was in my 30s, and like, there's something happens when you hit your 30s, I think, where you start looking ahead, and you're like, I was like trying to imagine myself as like the 50-year-old DJ, and like I was like,
Hmm.
okay, how's this going to pan out? And I was like having a bit of a moment of like, I've spent my entire life doing music, like ever since I
Hmm.
was young, and I've been doing it professionally since I was a teenager. But again, I had to work other jobs and stuff, and then I wasn't always able to live on my music, so I'd done
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff. And one of those things was, you mentioned that I was into sailing. I grew up, both my parents were huge sailors. And I'll tell you right
Hmm.
now, classical guitar nails and sailing, they don't mix. They're
Yeah, I can
not a good match,
imagine.
right? Yeah, I can't sail before I perform. But I was really into boats. So I had volunteered to do search and rescue with our in Gibson's, our local crew there, the SAR 14. And I got really into that. It was just like, super exciting. We're on this high speed boat. You got to do all your first aid. You got to, you got to do all the stuff. We're doing missions, like, and it was like, you gotta, like, you have to do 24 hours on call every week. And it was like, you get a pan, which is like a medical emergency, non-life-threatening, or a mayday, which is a life-threatening emergency, in the middle of the night or in the middle of the day. And you'd have like 25, 30 knots of wind blowing out on the strait, which is a lot, and big waves. And then you're doing 30 knots in this boat trying to get to these people and stuff. And this boat's on fire also. It was really exciting. And I got into it. So then I ended up getting all my tickets and things to run boats. So then I started running boats. I did, and I'm still DJing and doing my electronic music, because it wasn't like I was working a lot, and I was maybe doing like 10 or 20 hours a week. And it was just like adventure, right? And I worked for this amazing guy who's like a third or fourth generation like log salvager, like a legit beachcomber. I beachcombed. I did, like, I ran, like, we towed stuff. I did, I had a landing craft, so I did shore landings, I did vessel assist, all these things. Like, it was just like this fantastic. I did oil spill response training a few years in a row, like, which is something that I wouldn't want to do if there really was a spill, but I would. I mean, you have to. But anyway, when you're working in, I just had a small ticket. It's like the smallest one you can get, which is like your SVOP. So it's just like me and 12 passengers. And the boats, I don't know if there's a size limit on the boat. There might be, but I think it's mostly just like you and 12 passengers. So, you spend a lot of the time alone. Like, I was running people way up, we were going up the Fraser, we were going up, Squamish, we were going across to the islands and stuff like that. And a lot of the time, like, it's like either you're on the boat alone a lot. And I did a lot of thinking. On the boat, and I had a conversation with somebody about music and guitar and stuff, and I don't know what happened, and I can't even remember what the conversation was, but I came home and I picked up my guitar, and I have not put it down since. It was like rediscovering like a long lost love. And like, and the guitar was like there for me when I was young. You're going through those angsty teenage years, and you're weird and you don't know how to fit in and stuff. Like, the guitar was just like this amazing thing for me. And it was amazing that it came to me, prior to COVID, because that gave me something like grip while we were all, in hiding and stuff. But yeah, it was one of those things where it was like, I had a love for, and and you as you get older, right? Like, I'm not rinsing on the old thing, but it's like, we're all here right now, this one time, right? And I was like, I don't think I would look back, in 20 years and feel okay about the fact that I didn't do that. I was like, no, it wasn't just the playing. I wanted to study. Like, I wanted to take myself as far, and because I had a lot of theory and a lot of classical, but then it was left for a while, and I did a lot of the other music. It was like, it was just like an epiphany. It was like, I need to do this, and I need to see how far I can go. And I want to learn, because like, I didn't even know how to properly pluck the guitar at the time, or all these things, like, and I did master classes with Mark Teichholz that first year in Kaslo, and Daniel Bolshoi, and you guys were all there playing, like, in such high level playing. And it was just, I didn't know that you could do that stuff. I just didn't. So anyway, so that was just, and it all happened. Like, it's kind of, am I talking too much? Is this too long?
No, it's okay. Very interesting.
Well, it's funny, because like this Vancouver show is actually really, it's a special thing, because when I decided that I wanted to get I only had my like $200 Takamine classical that I got when I was like 13 or 14 or whatever, right? That's the guitar I had. And I'm on the Sunshine Coast. There's like, I didn't know anybody. And because I haven't been involved in live music for a long time, I just, I didn't know anybody. So I was just like, I just Googled, classical guitar teachers in Vancouver, and I found Han Nguyen from Vancouver Academy of Music.
That's right.
So I emailed her and was like, oh, can I get lessons with you? And she's like, well, I don't teach private like that. You'd have to come, take lessons at school and stuff. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. But she was like, Celso Machado lives on the coast. Why don't you check out him? And I was like, Celso Machado, and then so I like, and because I'd seen him around, but I didn't really know, I hadn't connected, who he was. So I I sent him it's kind of it's a slightly embarrassing story because I sent him,
Okay.
I thought about telling the story at the concert, but
Yeah.
I sent him an email and didn't hear back from him. And so I was kind of like, oh, I was a little bummed, right? And
Hmm.
little did I know that he had actually replied right away, but it went to my junk mail. So
Oh.
yeah, so I didn't know. And I was driving down the road and I saw Celso, and I was like, oh man, that's Celso Machado. Like and I thought about it for about half a block, and I was like, no, I'm gonna go meet him. Like, this is my
Yeah.
chance. I turned around, chased him down the road, stopped behind him, got out of the truck, and I was like, I was like, are you Celso Machado? And he's like, sort of like, yeah, like, who are you? And I was like, I'm Josh. I wanted to take lessons and stuff. And he's like, yeah, I emailed you, man. Like, but anyway, so we met in that moment. And
Yeah.
then he was like, yeah, come, we'll do some lessons and stuff. And then we just
Hmm.
hit it off. Like,
Yeah.
we're really quite similar in a lot of ways, with our just what we want to do. Like Celso does, he is another, like, Celso is such an amazing inspiration. Like, you were talking about
Yeah.
inspiration, Matthew Herbert, but that's from a long time ago. But Celso, he keeps me going to this day.
Yeah. He's brilliant.
He is like, I don't even think we know how brilliant Celso is. Like, he
Yeah.
really is one of the most incredible artists. And I was lucky to get to study with some of the world's best guitarists just for a short amount of time. But like,
Hmm.
Celso's just amazing. And like, he's just, he was just off to Toronto to play for the Music Without Borders guys. He's going to fly overnight and he's going to be there for 3 days, got 2 guitars, all this stuff. I took him to the ferry. He's just this, wonderful guy. But
Hmm.
so, and his like knowledge of the guitar is like, he knows classical. He knows classical, but it's not really
Yeah.
his thing. He did a lot of
Hmm.
he's unbelievably amazing at early music. He
Yeah.
has some of the best early music sounds. Like, he knows Pablo Marquez, who teaches in Basel, who's great with early music, and Hopkinson Smith, who I got to study with,
Yeah.
another awesome early music guy. So we did some like Anthony Holborn and some like stuff like that, and then of
Hmm.
course we got into all the South American music, and it's just
Yeah.
like, it's great learning from Celso, because you'd be like, here, I'll teach you this. I'm gonna play. One of the pieces I was thinking of playing is it's one, it's the Villalobos Shoro Típico. Like, everybody plays this one, but Celso showed me this way to play it, and he's like teaches it to me, and then it's like, don't ever play this for a classical guitar teacher because they're not going to agree with the
Yeah.
interpretation. But it's like but it's neat. He's got this whole
Yeah.
way of doing, and he's got his own technique and stuff. So
Yeah.
it was, so from there, and then so of course my first lesson was salsa. The story goes on. And I had a coffee, so it's not going to stop yet. But I had I had my old guitar there, and salsa was like, you're going to need a new guitar. And
Hmm.
I was like, oh, well, I don't even know. What are you playing? And he's like, oh, this is a Martin Blackwell. And I was
Oh,
like, who's
yeah.
Martin Blackwell? Right. And
Ah.
then, and the funny thing was, is when I forgot about this part, that when, after we met and decided to hook up for that first lesson, it turned out Salsa was living literally a 30-second drive from my house. Like,
Yeah.
he was
Yeah.
just down the
Exactly.
road. Like, we were pretty much neighbors, like, saying, so that was really neat. And then he was like, Martin Blackwell. Oh, who's that? Oh, he lives here on the Sunshine Coast. So then I was like, I want to listen to Blackwell guitars. So I Googled Blackwell guitars, and the first person to pop up was Daniel Bolshoi playing
Okay.
Platero EO
Yeah.
on his Blackwell, right? And so I was just like, whoa, I love that piece of music. Who's this guy, Daniel Bolshoi? Well, these guitars are amazing, right? So then from Daniel, I found Alec. I found you guys at Caslo, and then
Hmm.
that led to going to the master's degree in Spain. So it was
Yeah.
like, and it just all like from that one email with Han, one,
Yeah.
quick message, this whole will lead to me being on the stage in Vancouver in a month, was just that one email. And it was like, and I think that there's like for me, there's like a lesson there for teachers, music teachers and supporters and volunteers, as well as students and stuff. And it's like, one is that, like, for teachers and people who are supporting the music and stuff, like, and especially teachers, don't underestimate the, what you do could
Yeah.
change a musician's life. Like that, Han was sweet and just sent this, like, check this out, like, do this little thing, and probably didn't think too much about it. It was just like,
Hmm.
dun, dun, dun. But it changed my life. you
Yeah.
know and then when I think about students and stuff, it was like, in thinking about chasing dance also, it was like, don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to go out there and, like, even if you might look like a bit of a weirdo for a second, it's like, don't be afraid to, like, to ask or to try or to do different things,
Hmm.
because you never really know where things go. And, like, I mean, my ethos my entire life has been to I just want to do music in whatever capacity that I can, that I can
Hmm.
live from it. Like it's like,
Yeah.
and I don't need much. I mean, like in classical guitar, it's you don't want to need much because
Hmm.
it's not the easiest. But yeah, and so it just, all that stuff just kind of sort of just it just rolled in, and I was like, it was I feel like super fortunate to I
Yeah.
live 10
What a
minutes
small world.
from. Yeah, it is a small world, and it was just, I'm close to, I've become good friends with Martin now, and yeah, and I went on the list with Martin like way back then, and I
Hmm.
have my Blackwell now, and it's just, it's like these things. I mean, you got to work for it. You can't expect it to come your way, but at the same
Yeah.
time, things do, and you got to have, sort of a faith, I guess, in
Yeah.
just in the process, and in life and stuff. So
Yeah.
that's
Seems
how I
very
ended up
much
sort of
like
here.
no guts, no glory, like the theme.
It is. Well, I mean, and it's funny because I drew that back to the boat stuff, because it's like when you're docking boats and things,
Yeah.
like especially power boats and sailboats, they have a keel, so you can get some speed up, and they'll still steer with no power, right? Whereas a motorboat steers very badly without power. So it's like
Hmm.
when you want to get into the dock, no guts, no glory. You got to get that boat in there, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, sometimes my ethos when I was learning was kind of like, well, it may not look pretty, but I'll get there, right?
Yeah.
And then once you get there, then you can start to pretty it up a little bit. You
Hmm.
can work on things, but you just sometimes you gotta, I don't know, that what is that saying? It's like you gotta run before you can walk, kind of.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just kind of gotta step in with both feet, I guess.
Yeah. Speaking of which, like I always had the impression of you, like even from like the very first time we met, that you were just like an amazing musician. You just had a really good sense of musicality. So I was curious, like, what's your process of kind of like getting to that, getting to the, I guess, imbuement stage of the pieces that you're playing?
Oh, that's cool. It's a good question, and I really appreciate that you'd say that, because I think you're a wonderful musician too. And I think, I mean, the musicality for me was like a little bit easier than, say, the technicality. So I find that like it's kind of like you play to your strengths and shore up your weaknesses, sort of thing. So it's like I work really, really hard on my technique to try to keep it under control.
Hmm.
But I think with the musicality side of things, and I'll tell a story about this. But I think a lot of it has to do with for me personally.
Hmm.
It's life experience. It's like, we I really look at music as like I speak through my music. Like I think it's really cool when you can have a project and you can talk a lot about what's going on and what's inside it, and things. Um, but for me, it's like it's got to be I'm hoping that I can convey what I'm trying to get across through the music without an
Hmm.
explanation. And I've always felt that way. And it was funny because like when I got to study with Memo Barwaco, he said something that was sort of along those lines, that was just, about the artistry, and keeping that, sort of as your number one. But I kind of lost my train of thought here. Where were we? We were on
Musicality.
musicality, right? Oh yeah, and strengthening your. Okay, yes, this was it. So it was like, was in music. It's like, it's that's what Barwick said to me. And I was like, he's like, if you have to explain it, you failed, kind of. And I mean,
Hmm.
failed's not really a term that we use so much anymore. But it's like, if you have to explain what you're doing, then you didn't get across, because it's
Hmm.
musical expression. That's where we're trying to get things
Yeah.
across. And I find that like what helps me with that is life experience, and like, is experiencing a lot of things, like, like when you think about music as a language of the soul, or the trifecta of like mind, body, soul, or whatever it is.
Hmm.
It's we speak on a language that's just like, it's we can all understand it. We don't need to like know how to conjugate verbs and all these
Yeah.
sorts of things to
Hmm.
understand it. And I think that comes from, emotional experiences, and just life experiences. And I always felt that way. And it's funny because when I did the that course, there was a course in the master's program with this guy Victor Candia, who's a neuroscientist, and he was a guitarist who developed focal dystonia.
Yeah.
And so he went into neuroscience to understand stuff. And he works at the University of Lausanne, and in Switzerland, and Zurich, I believe. He comes and he does this week with you in Alicante. And And it's not actually so much about technique and all these things. It's like a lot of it is about like, physiology of the body when you're
Mm-hmm.
under performance anxiety and stress and stuff like this,
Yeah.
and how not to, hurt yourself and things. But he also looks at things that are like, we always attack ourselves as artists a lot of the time, like my technique's not good enough, or my dynamics aren't good enough, or I'm
Mm-hmm.
not fast enough, or whatever it is, we go after ourselves.
Yeah.
And he was kind of like, there's other factors that might be involved that are the root cause of things that are going on. So like maybe your
Mm-hmm.
fingernails aren't, you're not getting good tone, and it's actually your fingernails need to be just whatever. He does this whole thing. But his whole thing is just to help everybody become better players and
Yeah.
whatever that looks. He works with like James Galway. He helps like a lot of artists who, if they run into like, hand problems and stuff like this,
Mm-hmm.
professional artists. But he had one student that was like, you know, and this is very along my philosophy. I had one student that came to him and said that, I really, really want to, get better at the guitar. And he was like, okay, and this is like, because a lot of us end up just studying really, really hard, right? We just get
Yeah.
into the room, and the guitar requires that. Like, there's no doubt you can't just like go whatever and play guitar for half an hour a
Mm-hmm.
day and expect to like get anywhere. You got to do it all. You got to do
Yeah.
the heavy work, but you also need to live a life. So anyway, this kid had clearly just been like working at home all the time and
Yeah.
studying really hard. And he really wanted to get ahead. So he went to Victor and asked if he could go out with, like, hang out with him like outside of class, and if they could figure, so he could tell him. And Victor was like, sure, yeah, I'll help you become a better guitarist. He's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
cool, great, amazing. We'll meet at 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, right? He's like, awesome. Okay, so they meet up, and Victor's like, let's go get a coffee. Okay, cool. We'll go get a coffee. So they go get a coffee, right? And then kids waiting. Okay, when are we gonna hear the goods about the guitar? When am
Yeah.
I gonna get stuff? It's like, yeah, okay. Do you want to go for a walk on the beach? Yeah, okay, we'll go for a walk on the beach. Go for a walk on the beach, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then from the walk on the beach, they go get ice cream, right? And then he's like, let's go check out this museum. They go to the museum. And, it's been like an hour and a half, almost 2 hours. And the student's like, when are we gonna learn about being a better guitarist? And
Yeah.
Victor's like, we're already doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Go out and live your life and experience some stuff, bring that into yourself, and then put it through your guitar.
Yeah.
And I love that, because I played in Nelson for Emma Rush in May, and I ended
Mm-hmm.
up staying at a friend's house the night before, and he was like really, you know into world issues and things and stuff, and like it's super intense stuff. And I was just like, I gotta perform tomorrow. I just don't want to, I don't
Yeah.
want to go there. I just want to keep things nice and cool. And he totally
Yeah.
made me feel really anxious and stuff, all these conversations. And then I picked up the guitar because I was like, I need to play, because I just need to feel like everything's going to be okay and I'm going to be able to play tomorrow. And I can't remember what piece that I was playing. Maybe it was like V-Levels Prelude 1 or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was feeling super anxiety. And I just started playing it and letting that emotion out through the music. And it's maybe not how I'd want to perform it, but I
Mm-hmm.
realized it was one of those, a realization that, like,
Yeah.
yeah, don't forget that you have this form of expression. If you're feeling these emotions, sometimes you can't explain it. Sometimes you can't, convey it to somebody or talk about it. It's just like, there's so many, dimensions to it. It was just
Mm-hmm.
like, it just came out, and I
Yeah.
felt so much better after. And it was like, oh yeah, again, musical expression, musicality, it's about being human, I think,
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. But again, it can be really difficult to express yourself properly if you don't have, like, you know, a bit of musical understanding and
Yeah, that's
technique
right.
and stuff like that, right? Like, it all goes hand in hand. Because I've had
Mm-hmm.
teachers that were like, you don't need technique, just learn the pieces and stuff. And I was like, cool. And then I was like, oh no, I need the technique.
Yeah. Yeah.
It gives you the ability to convey your ideas, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times, and the harder the
Yeah.
piece, the more technique you need to be able to convey those ideas.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it just comes back to, because my life has been all over the place, and which is not awesome. Sometimes it's like, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, and maybe if I just stuck with one thing, I would be, maybe more financially better or whatever. But it's like, at the end of the day, it's all about the music for me. So, and it's just
Yeah.
like, it feeds it. So that's just what's happening.
Great. And do you find that you connect emotionally when you're playing on stage as well?
Ooh, good question. I It's a really good question, because I played a concert here on the coast a few months ago, and I don't know what was going on prior to the concert, but I was really not in the zone. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the most I've, like, and you know how it is, like, when we, like, anybody's performing, the feelings. Like, I don't call it
Yeah.
nerves anymore. It's excitement, right? We all get excited. We all get, like, and no matter what you're playing, how hard your, you know, program is or whatever, you're always excited. But yeah, I really was just like in a not good headspace for performing. I
Yeah.
didn't want to do it. I didn't like, and I love performing. Like that's my thing. Everything for me leads to the performance. But like, I mean,
Hmm.
after a lot of years of DJing and stuff, like performing with a guitar is a quite a different animal. Like
Hmm.
it requires a lot actually. After I've been back to the guitar for years and years now, and I'm still learning how hard it is, at times.
Hmm.
But anyway, that day I could have like it was like I couldn't get out of my own skin. Like I was just like, oh, I just don't want to play.
Yeah.
And as soon as the first people, because this little place that I play here on the coast, I don't have like a green room or anything. It's like it's just a local thing. I set it up, right? Like I
Hmm.
set up my own lights and stuff, and which is partly why I was probably not in the best headspace, because like
Right.
organizing your own concert and
Yeah.
performing it is like, yeah, it's not recommended, let's say.
Hmm.
It's quite a bit, and especially because this place is not like I built my own stage, I did all, I set this whole thing up. And I think probably just I was feeling a bit harried. But the moment that people arrived, and I started like, it was like when performance time was kind of sort of happening, because even though the concert hadn't started, it kind of put me in that headspace. And it was like,
Yeah.
as soon as there was ears to listen, I was like at peace. It was like,
Oh.
because it's like, because I think, it's like we can play for ourselves and we hear it, but like you don't hear yourself the way you can if you listen to
Hmm.
someone else. And it's just music just isn't complete until someone hears it, until you share it, I think is
Yeah.
one of the things. And so it was like, I was like, how am I going to play like Felicidad, like the when you're
Yeah.
feeling like the last thing I want to do is play guitar.
Yeah.
But once that connection happened with the people, it was just like it was all good. And that was cool, because like I've definitely had performance experiences where you're like, oh, I'm working really hard, and
Hmm.
your mind starts to wander and whatever, and you're like, and you're not there. But sometimes I think that's part of the game too. Like I don't think that we can always all be 100% in the pocket and
Yeah.
in the zone for
Yeah.
every concert. And you have to learn, and I'm still learning this, that you have to, you got to trust yourself to a certain degree. Like we're all very, very critical of ourselves,
Yeah.
which is good, because that's how we get better. But I think that, like, personally, because I don't do much videos. I'm not a super social media guy. I'm trying, but I don't do much of that stuff. So I don't listen to myself a lot in
Hmm.
playback, but I have been trying a little bit more. And like I've had a day where I'm like, man, I feel really good, like I'm really playing well today,
Yeah.
awesome. And I'll record that, and then a couple days later, like I'm struggling, I'm like, how bad does this sound? So I'll record that, and I'm like, and then go back to the video from a couple days ago, and I'm feeling
Hmm.
really good, and I'm like, it's actually not, there's really not that much difference. My
Yeah.
emotional state makes it
Hmm.
seem really different. But
Yeah.
if I could step outside myself, it's like, yeah, I was playing better the other day, but not that much better. So it's like you have to learn to trust yourself, I think, to a certain
Yeah.
degree, to say, this doesn't feel good. I don't feel good. My hands, because like I'll, I have to be really good with like trying to keep my technique like this, because I've got these long
Yeah.
fingers that want to do this, and I'll be watching my hand, and it looks like it's doing this instead of
Yeah.
like doing this, and and it can be a little bit tough, but yeah, you just gotta like, no, it's okay. Trust that it sounds all right, and
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
because you need to somehow get into the zone in
Hmm.
some way if you can, and like I've had like moments like, yeah, I don't know, this is a bit of a funny weird story, but it was like I was playing like a really emotional tune, and there was like two flies dying on the floor beside me. And I was watching these flies like buzzing around on their backs, like, and I was like trying to like stay in the zone for this piece, because there's people,
Right.
and these little things, like, and it's just like, yeah, you just it's just part of like the performance thing, I guess. You
Yeah.
just gotta like, okay, that's what's happening, and I'll just
That's right.
somehow play through that. But yeah, it's a good question, because I think it must be different for all of us, I think, little bits. But
Hmm.
again, it's like, how many times do you perform that piece? Is the first time in front of an audience that you're performing this piece? Yeah, okay, you might not be able to
Yeah.
feel too connected in that,
Hmm.
especially if you're playing something that's a little bit outside your comfort zone and stuff. So, but it's hard, because you don't want to let yourself get too complacent and be like, okay, that's too hard, I'll just play the easy stuff, it's okay. But you need to, you always got to keep pushing the envelope a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
So you just have to accept that it might not be exactly where you want it. Like I heard that Dale Kavanaugh, she'll play like, a bunch of time, a piece of music a bunch of times before she performs it. And I know
Hmm.
David Russell's the same. He said that he would, before he has a debuts a new program, he goes and like has like a few concerts at his house with some
Yeah.
friends and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And I was like, that's a good idea,
Mm-hmm.
you
It
know,
really
instead of
is.
just like getting up there cold and playing, you know, because like I find one of the things I found the hardest was with guitar and getting back into it was like, yeah, studying, you're at home. Yeah, no problem. You sound great. It's like you're comfortably relaxed. Everything's great. And then you get up in
Mm-hmm.
front of an audience and you're like, these aren't even my hands anymore. Like, I
That's
don't even
right.
know
Yeah.
whose these are. And I'm sending messages and they're not doing anything, you know?
That's right.
And so you really need performance practice, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can't really get it any other way. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like, you got to bite the bullet at some point and just get up in front of people and start doing it
Mm-hmm.
because like, and it may not be, I remember, oh yeah, one of my first performances back in the guitar, I won like a festival, like this little, like a festival. And so I had to play, you know, the highlights concert. And like, I was back there announcing my name on, and I was backstage and I was having the craziest blank. I couldn't remember the first two notes of the piece that I was playing. And it was
Yeah.
like this horrible experience, you know, and it was like,
Yeah.
and I didn't play well. I played terribly, right? Like it was
Mm-hmm.
like, and it was my first performance on the coast
Yeah.
ever, and it was a full house, and it was terrible, right? Like it
Yeah.
was just like,
Rough.
oh, I couldn't sleep for like days after that because I
Yeah.
felt so, you know, so on the thing. But it was just kind of like the, you know, you gotta, you know, I mean, you got to be realistic, but you got to put a positive spin on some things in order to get a positive outcome, right? Like if you
Yeah.
just negative on it, then chances are you're going to have a negative outcome, you know? So I was
Mm-hmm.
just like, well, I've bombed. So I've done that. Check. You know, try
Right.
to
Yeah.
just like, okay, now I know what that feels like. So it's
Yeah.
like, now I don't need to be so afraid of it because I already did it.
Yeah, it's
You know,
true.
I've done that.
That's
So,
right.
you know, so if anybody's had that experience where they played a bad concert or whatever, it's like, just check that off the list of things that you
Yeah.
know, to do in life, you know, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
go ahead, just put that on your to-do list, blow a concert. Okay, there you go. You know, and then just check that one
Wonderful.
off, you know, and then
Yeah.
don't do it again. Take that off the to-do list forever, you know,
Yeah.
but those experiences, they can help, but you gotta be constructive about
Yeah.
finding the positive part of that
Mm-hmm.
experience, you know, and also just letting things slide a little bit. I think you
Yeah.
got to just accept that, you know, all of us, every guitarist, every musician, artist, everybody's had a bad concert. Everybody
Yeah.
hasn't played as good as they can. Everybody makes a mistake or something, you know. It's like, so you kind of just gotta accept the fact that it's going to happen and sort of move
Yeah.
forward as best you can, you know?
Absolutely. Great. Well, that's about the end of the interview. I'd like to leave a little bit of time for some viewer questions if there's any.
Well, yeah.
So maybe just one final question while we wait for viewer questions to trickle in. Uh, so, last question for me. What kind of things have you learned from DJing and working with electronic music that you think would be useful to know as a classical musician? Because you got a lot of secrets from that side of the world. So anything you can
It's
share with
true. I
us?
mean, you know, and it's funny because it's like, you know, thinking about that, like, um, you know, it's a tough question because like there's not a huge amount of crossover as far as like, you know, performing a DJ thing. I mean, like DJing is like in a way so much easier than and I come from like an old school like DJing vinyl. We actually had to beat
Mm-hmm.
match and do
Yeah.
all this stuff. And I still do, you know, I don't play vinyl anymore, but you know, I think there, let's see. I think that you could draw conclusions where you need, um you have to remember to a certain degree, I think maybe in guitar, I don't know. And this is just, we're just jamming this out right now. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
100%, don't quote me on this 100%.
Okay,
But
sure.
I think we need to remember sometimes in the guitar that it is about, you know, because we get really caught up as artists, like trying to play the hardest stuff, trying to make sure
Mm-hmm.
that we show our technical ability, and we call, in the electronic music world, we call them heads, right? So people
Yeah.
who really know dubstep, all the producers, the music, what labels that came out, everything, we call those guys heads, right? So
Yeah.
the guitar heads, right? So we play for each other a lot. Like, you know, it's like, I always think of I was playing for other guitarists, is like, it's kind of like driving down the road with the police behind you, you know, you're like really worried that you're gonna like, you
Yeah.
know, hit the signal and do everything right, you know, when there's guitarists
Uh-huh.
in the audience, you're like, ugh. But we play for each other a lot, and I think, and I think we help each other rise up. But it's good to remember that you don't always have to play the most, you know, intense
Yeah.
stuff in order for people to enjoy it. It is, I mean, I love the super high level classical, like not just like the ability, but like the musicality, and like in the music itself, like being able to interpret a really difficult piece of music and perform in a way that we can understand it, is like, that's huge.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of like high level listeners, that's amazing. But there's other people who just want to hear the guitar because it's such a cool instrument. So it's good to remember those sorts of things. And another thing too is like in programs, and this is because like when I DJ, like I go all over the place, and not necessarily in tempo, which is a big thing now, because like in the 90s and stuff, everything was, because we only had so much pitch control, like how much we could speed up the turntables and slow them
Yeah.
down, that the genres in electronic music were all really like made around tempo, right? So it's like, because you can only mix house music, which is 120, 25, 130 BPM
Yeah.
with house music, right? And you can only mix drum and bass 170 BPM with bass music and stuff. So it was really like, defined by the tempos. And now it's like all over the place, but it's like I stick to the same tempo, but I play all different kinds of music. And
Yeah.
when I saw Pablo Marquez, I've seen Pablo Marquez perform once, and he played this amazing program. And like I haven't really dug into like super contemporary classical with like lots of like percussion things and little sounds and things, which I think is totally cool. I just haven't done it myself yet. But some of it I find is like, it's a bit like, can be a bit intense. But Pablo Marquez put some really contemporary stuff in the middle of his program that was really challenging. And then after that, he played some Mertz that was like really lyrical and beautiful. And the contrast of those two things together in one program, I was like, I'm not really feeling this. But when he got to that, it was like, it changed the way we experienced this because of that. And that's a big thing in the DJ when you're putting a set together and when you're mixing and stuff like that. It's like those contrasts. Like if you can go from like a fast double time to a half time or something like that, like it can sound really different, but man, like it'll open up your brain, So I think that looking that the DJ world, maybe we're boiling this down to this. The DJ world has made me look at putting my programs together a little differently, so that I have some stuff that's different. People might not know it. I have some stuff that people know, some stuff that people like, maybe some stuff that's a little challenging. And it's like, and then I hope to put it together in a way that it's like, makes sense as a whole as it does as individual pieces.
Great. Awesome. All right. Then maybe
long answer.
Yeah, no, that's good. Okay, maybe some small questions. How do you handle the mental aspect of performing, and do you have any strategies that you use to overcome performance anxiety or like getting too excited on stage?
Totally. Well, the first one is exactly to say, like, I try not to refer to it as performance anxiety. I think of it as being excited, because actually it's really the same emotion. It's the same physical thing that's happening in your body. Like, and it's like, because I mentioned I was big into sailing. Like when you go out on a really windy day or an intense day, it's the same type of excitement actually that I experience before I get on a boat as when I get on stage. And I mean, I didn't go through performance anxiety for a long time, because, even though I'm like, some of my DJ shows are like, for thousands of people, but it's really different. When you sit down in front of 50 people and it's dead silent and you got 100 eyeballs in it, it's a lot different. But the first thing is just like, is accepting it. It's going to happen. It's going to happen every time. And like, it was funny because I was saying with Celso, I took him to the ferry and his son performed one of his first shows, right? His son's living in Montreal, and he called Celso up like an hour before. It was like, Dad, I'm nervous. And Celso is like, he's 50 years of touring. He's been in pretty much every country in the world, right?
Yeah.
He still gets nervous.
Yeah.
He still gets nervous, right? It still happens. But, you get out there and you just like, I think another way to help your nerves is make sure you got a good first tune. Your first tune is one that you love, one that you feel fairly comfortable with, that maybe you've performed before, something that can make you feel like and I'm going to probably play my, I love this tune, Platero, Yo, right? And Celso was like, you should play this one as the first tune. And it's like, in all honesty, it's been like, it's one of my security blankets. I love that piece of music, and it makes me feel good.
Caslo.
I played in Caslo, right? That was the first time I played it. Right. And but yeah, so I think making sure that like you've got some places in your program that are kind of like almost like a break. Like it's like, okay, I'm going to play something hard, and but then the one after that is gonna, and you just accept it. Don't think of it as nerves. Think of it as excitement. That's what it is. And just like, and also don't forget that like we all did this to ourselves. Right. We all wanted to get up there in front of everybody. So yeah, I just like, it's just going to happen. And actually, the nerves, think of them as a way to help you. That excitement will actually, it gives you extra, chemicals in your body that make you sharper and faster and all these things. So just like, think about the positives you get from those things in your life, and don't dwell. Because I played one concert where it wasn't so good. I made quite a few mistakes in some of the tunes and stuff, but it was like, just keep going. That's like, and it always sounds worse to you than it does to the audience, right? So it's just right. Just keep going, and like, you're gonna get focused on this screech or the sound or everything, and you'll find. Actually, I I played a Dale Cavanaugh piece and I forgot a chunk. And one of the guitarists that was in the audience didn't even notice, right? They just happened to
Oh,
like tune
yeah.
out for a second, right? Or
Hmm.
something, whatever. So don't forget, like some people will be really focused on every single note, but not everybody will. Some people just have their eyes closed and they'll just be spacing out, and just
Yeah,
listening, and
yeah,
they don't even notice. So it's like, careful how much you fixate on one little thing,
yeah.
because it's probably just you. I mean,
Great.
sometimes it isn't.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you so much. This was great. For anyone who is here, please go to vancouverguitar.org and get your tickets for the November 22nd show. It'll be Josh and Celso Machado doing a little double bill, and it's going to be great. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and thanks so much for the really insightful and very interesting stories too.
Thanks, TJ. Really appreciate it.
Yes, well, then I'll see you at the concert.
For sure.